Do you feel a sense of being perpetually bound, always running on a schedule that isn't truly yours? You try to break free, to seize your own time, but something unseen pulls you back into the rhythm, a quiet, undeniable force. What if I told you this deep-seated control, this pervasive feeling of limitation, isn't accidental? What if it's the signature of an entity, a principle, that has woven itself into the fabric of our reality for millennia? An entity called Saturn. Forget the simplistic myths. Forget the child-friendly tales. We are talking about something far more profound, a chilling truth, hidden in plain sight. Saturn is more than a planet, more than a forgotten god. He is the master of boundaries, the architect of restriction, the silent warden of this very universe. His influence is in every clock, every rule, every wall you encounter. And the most terrifying part? His ultimate purpose might be to bind the soul itself, to trap it within a repeating cycle, a cycle we call life. The cosmic architect and the veil of form. For thousands of years, across countless civilizations, Saturn has cast a long shadow. In Roman lore, he was the venerable god of harvest and time, the giver of structure. His reign, a golden age of effortless abundance, a world where order was inherent. But then the age shifted, and Saturn transformed. He became Kronos to the Greeks, the Titan who devoured his own children, not out of madness, but out of a brutal, cold logic, a strategic act to preserve his power. This was no mere story. It was a cosmic metaphor. That which grants life can also consume it. Time itself is the ultimate devourer. Every passing second takes a piece. Saturn does not punish in the way you understand. He preserves, he restricts, he demands sacrifice. This chilling principle appears elsewhere. Think of Moloch, the ancient Semitic deity, a god of fire. To him, entire generations were offered, sacrificed for stability, for continuity. Both Saturn and Moloch operate on the same terrifying principle. The future must be fed to the present, whether through ritual, through law, or through an insidious ideology. The pattern endures. It is active now. Saturn is no longer just a deity in forgotten temples. He is a fundamental force, a principle encoded into reality's very logic. The cost of structure is sacrifice. These ancient gods never truly die. They descend, they become patterns. Patterns that shape how you build, how you obey, how you fear. His logic seeped into your calendars, into your institutions, even into the limits you place on your own dreams. The hunger of Saturn was never for flesh. It was for continuity, and for continuity, your future is fed to your past. To grasp Saturn's true depth, we must move beyond surface myths. We must enter the realm of hidden knowledge. Here, Saturn becomes more than a god. He is a governing force. He dictates the structure of existence itself. In sacred astrology, Saturn is the great teacher, the planet of boundaries, of karma, of discipline, of delay. He governs lead, the densest of metals. He rules everything slow, heavy, inevitable. When Saturn appears in your chart, he brings no chaos. He brings law. He reveals what must be faced, what must be carried, what must be earned. Saturn offers no quick rewards. He delays gratification. He waits until your soul is truly ready. Every test, every perceived failure, every moment of limitation, all are part of a larger process, the cultivation of spiritual resilience. In this light, Saturn is not punishing you. He is instructing you. He repeats what you refuse to learn. He preserves what must be endured. He returns what you thought you had escaped. In Eastern esotericism and within theosophical thought, Saturn is the lord of karma, the force that records every action. He returns it to you, not to punish, but to teach. He is the mirror of consequence, the architect of your experience, the one who ensures your soul never leaves a lesson unfinished. This is why in alchemy, Saturn governs the nigredo, the black phase, the stage of decomposition. Here, identity dissolves, the ego fractures, the raw material of transformation begins to rot. It is the necessary death, the gateway before rebirth, the symbolic grave. Every true initiate must pass through it. No great work exists without the nigredo, no gold without decay, no transcendence without first confronting the crushing weight of your own limitations. But Saturn's role dives even deeper. In the Kabbalistic tradition, he links to Bina, the third Sephira, the Great Mother, the throne of understanding. Bina is structure itself. She is the womb. She gives form to the raw energy of Chokmah. In doing so, she limits it. She is the intelligence. She defines the vessel. She holds the law that sustains. All manifestation must pass through her matrix. Without Bina, there is no incarnation. Without Saturn, there is no shape. And like all Sephiroth, Bina casts a shadow, a realm of concealment, of illusion, where structure becomes oppression, where form becomes a cage. In the Cliff-Hothic mirror, this shadow is known as Setarial, the concealers. Knowledge is hidden here, buried beneath layers of false order. What matters most now is Saturn's position as gatekeeper. In Gnostic and Hermetic traditions, Saturn marks the point of descent, the threshold. The soul passes through it to enter material reality. He grants passage into incarnation. He binds spirit to matter, but he also stands at the gate of return, demanding the soul recall what it forgot. This is not just metaphor. In occult cosmology, Saturn is the first veil. The soul crosses it on its journey into flesh, and the final one it must penetrate to return to the source. He governs the ring of limitation, the boundary around form, the line between the eternal and the temporal. Until the soul learns his lessons, it cannot move beyond them. That is why Saturn has always been both feared and revered. He represents the contract, the spirit bound to structure. He allows no shortcuts. He is the test, the scaffold, the profound silence surrounding every threshold of transformation. In the eyes of the initiate, Saturn is not the enemy. He is the guardian, the crucible, the gate, the architectures of controls from temple to tech. Once you grasp Saturn's role as the force of structure and limitation, the next step becomes clear. You must recognize his most potent geometric symbol, the black cube. The cube is matter, in its most stable form, fixed, heavy, absolute. In sacred geometry, the cube represents the material world, a space where energy is bound, where movement is constrained, where everything possesses a defined edge. Unlike a sphere or a spiral, the cube does not flow. It contains spiritually. The cube has long been seen as a prison for the soul, a container. It traps light within form. In esoteric traditions, it represents incarnation in its densest state. The spirit descends through celestial spheres. It becomes trapped inside the cube of matter, forgetting its origin. In this context, the cube is not just a shape, it is a metaphysical cage. But what links this form directly to Saturn? It is not just symbolism, it is also science. In 1981, NASA's Voyager mission captured something inexplicable, a massive hexagonal storm on Saturn's North Pole, a perfect six-sided structure spinning with eerie stability, thousands of kilometers wide. It defied all explanation. But in geometry, a hexagon is the two-dimensional projection of a cube. Tilt a cube just right. What you see is a hexagon. That is where the link deepens. The hexagon is Saturn's signature, not in metaphor, but in observable planetary phenomena. That hexagon, stable, storm-bound, mathematically precise, it is reflected in countless esoteric depictions. Saturnian force, compression, order, isolation. Across the world, black cube structures appear in architecture, in religious sites, in public art installations. The most known example is the Kaaba in Mecca, a massive black cube wrapped in cloth. Millions pray towards it daily. Officially, it represents unity, devotion, but symbolically, it is the cube of Saturn, the container of divine presence. Within form, sacred, yet immovable, geometric, yet cosmic. The cube also appears in modern sculpture, black cube monuments, in New York, in Berlin, placed in corporate districts, near centers of finance, of administration. These are not accidental. They resonate with Saturnian energy, authority, permanence, invisibility. Their presence is quiet, but heavy, subconscious. Minimalist art, especially in the late 20th century, it embraced the black cube as a motif of reduction, of finality. It is the opposite of chaos. It is the shape of conclusion, of definition, of something rendered silent. Yet this silence is not peace. It is control. The presence of the black cube does not end in temples or sculpture. Once you know what to seek, you begin to see it everywhere, embedded in the architecture of modern power, hidden in plain sight, through corporate branding, product design, digital interfaces. It is as if the symbol has migrated from the altar to the algorithm. In the world of technology, of finance, the cube is ubiquitous. Corporations that shape global infrastructure, tech giants, security firms, data storage companies, they frequently use cube-like logos or minimalist cube symbolism in their branding. What is a data center, if not a black cube filled with compressed knowledge? What is a secure server, if not a cube of encoded control? These logos are not chosen randomly. They evoke the same ideas again and again: order, efficiency, containment, structure, minimalism. But beneath that aesthetic, they echo something much older: the Saturnian impulse toward compression and surveillance. In esoteric psychology, the cube also symbolizes the crystallization of consciousness. It is the point where psychic energy is no longer flowing, but fixed. Saturn, as Lord of time and boundaries, he governs this process. In a way, the more we embrace systems of rigid control, bureaucracy, digital monitoring, algorithmic behavior, the more we are entering the cube, spiritually speaking. You see it in the way cities are designed: blocks, grids, right angles, corporate plazas, surrounded by glass and steel cubes, public benches, shaped like minimalist blocks, security cameras at every corner, recording from fixed, angular perspectives. It is a geometry of control, both aesthetic and functional. But this geometry also has a psychological effect. It conditions the mind to accept structure, to normalize rigidity. You begin to move through a world of boxes, physical, digital, ideological, and you call it freedom. The cube has become a silent altar in the modern world. No priests, no incense, but the ritual is active. Every time you enter a password, walk past a surveillance system, or tap a screen to navigate a tightly coded interface, you are engaging with it. Yet, just like in the ancient myths, the cube contains a paradox. While it symbolizes imprisonment, it also preserves the divine spark. It holds light within matter, form within chaos. It is the tomb and the temple. In some esoteric traditions, the cube is even a necessary stage, a container, one that must be understood and transcended, not destroyed. Because the black cube of Saturn is not just a symbol of oppression, it is a test. And like all Saturnian tests, it asks the same question. Will you become the structure, or will you remember what was locked inside it? This journey of discovery, of looking beneath the surface, is a difficult one. It challenges everything you thought you knew. If this resonates with you, if you feel a pull towards deeper truths, consider joining this community. Tap that subscribe button. It's more than just a click. It's an act of defiance against the mundane. The hidden cult of consensus. Once Saturn ceases to be just a myth, becoming a living structure, his presence shifts from temples and scriptures to the invisible frameworks, the ones that define your everyday existence. No longer invoked through prayer, he is obeyed through compliance, through timetables, through policies, through silence. Saturn rules all systems, those that impose order through boundaries, laws, bureaucracies, institutions, ledgers, contracts. He needs no naming. His logic is embedded in every form that limits, that delays, or defines. He is the god of form, and the price of form is sacrifice. Modern society, it is built entirely around the ritual of time. The calendar, it has become sacred. The clock, an unblinking eye. Every hour, quantified. Every action, scheduled. Birthdays, deadlines, retirement ages. These are rites of passage. In the temple of linear time, no one brings offerings to this temple, because the temple is now your schedule. The altar is your desk. We sacrifice our attention for productivity, our spontaneity for reliability, our youth for education, our sleep for performance. These sacrifices are not occasional. They are systemic, daily, expected, and most disturbingly, unconscious. This is the logic of Kronos, the devouring father, not out of rage, but out of necessity. He consumes what threatens the structure, and so does the system. Time, vitality, dreams, anything that resists compression. It is either reshaped or eliminated. Unlike the ancient rituals, today's offerings leave no trace. The body no longer bleeds, but it breaks. The offering is internal, invisible. Pain has not vanished. It has been refined. Delays become anxiety. Pressure becomes fatigue. The soul does not scream. It folds. Saturn no longer punishes you directly. He trains you to punish yourself. Discipline becomes a virtue, compliance, a moral good. Self-sacrifice is rewarded, not with freedom, but with greater access to the system. Promotions, stability, recognition, the illusion of elevation within a structure that never truly releases you. This is how Saturn rules, not with chains, but with architecture, not through violence, but through form, not by silencing rebellion, but by making rebellion unnecessary. And so, we build lives out of sacrifice, believing it is progress. We measure our worth in hours. We track our goals in quarters. We offer up the present just to maintain the shape of the future, because without sacrifice, the system does not hold, and Saturn never forgets what is owed. It should be clear by now, Saturn is not merely a god of myth. He is a structure, a logic, embedded deep within society. But there is another layer, one that has remained concealed for centuries, maintained through symbols, rituals, and secrecy, a hidden cult. It does not worship Saturn as a deity. It channels him as a force, This force has worn many masks. In Canaanite tradition, he was El, the supreme god, the silent creator, distant, absolute. In Greek myth, he became Kronos, father of the Olympians, devourer of time. In Sumerian texts, we find Menuda, a god of discipline and war. In obscure biblical references, Remphan, associated with a star, a foreign deity, often linked to Saturn in post-biblical esotericism. Different names, same energy, always sovereign, always cold, always above. In the secret architecture of power, these masks reappear, not as literal gods to be worshipped, but as symbolic vehicles through which elite groups maintain control. Saturn is not invoked as a being. He is enacted as a system, a psychic structure of hierarchy, of silence, of karma, of discipline, one that rewards obedience and punishes deviation, not in this life alone, but across time itself. This is why Saturn is so deeply embedded in the doctrines of occult orders. Freemasonry, theosophy, ceremonial magic, all reference Saturnian principles, even when the name is obscured. In Masonry, the black and white tiles, the emphasis on time, structure, oaths, all mirror Saturn's essence. In Theosophy, Saturn is a planetary intelligence, responsible for karma, initiation, cosmic law. In magical systems, Saturn governs rituals of restriction, banishment, boundaries, silence. These are not coincidences, they are echoes. Saturn is the archetype of hierarchy, of continuity, of secrecy. Unlike other esoteric forces, often creative, rebellious, or chaotic, Saturn is cold, fixed. He does not liberate, he consolidates. That is why elites seek to align with his current to preserve power, maintain order, enforce silence through generations. This current is not always visible. It moves through architecture, through ritual, through law, but at its root, it is always the same. Structure must be preserved, even at the cost of life, freedom, or truth. Those who understand this, they do not need to believe in Saturn. They only need to obey his rhythm. What separates Saturnian power from other occult dynamics is its precision. It does not seduce. It does not intoxicate. It does not dazzle. It disciplines. Those who invoke it do so with full awareness of the consequences, because Saturn always collects his due. That is why among secret societies, his energy is channeled with rigor through exact timing, symbolic architecture, and above all, ritual. These rituals are not theatrical. They are structural, oaths of silence, cycles of initiation tied to astrological configurations, rituals of blood, not always literal, but symbolically representing karmic debt, sacrifice, or the binding of will. Saturnian magic is not about expansion. It is about consolidation, containment, reinforcement, and above all, continuity. Across multiple initiatory traditions, Saturn represents the final gate, the boundary between profane and sacred, between chaos and control. In many ceremonial rites, Saturn's influence is acknowledged at the beginning and end of an initiatic cycle as the force that seals the oath, binds the initiate, and marks the limits of what may be revealed. His signature is time, his contract is karma, and his price is silence. The higher one ascends in Saturnian systems, whether occult, political, or corporate, the more tightly one is bound to secrecy, hierarchy, and karmic responsibility. This is not superstition, it is architecture. The structure itself becomes sacred. That is why so many elite structures, from governmental protocols to banking systems to fraternal orders, all reflect Saturn's logic: fixed hierarchy, loyalty over truth, function over transparency. Everyone has a role, everyone has a place, and no one speaks unless authorized. In this context, Saturn is not just a planetary archetype. He is the metaphysical underpinning of control, and the cult needs no temples, because the entire system is the temple. Its pillars are institutions. Its altar is ritualized sacrifice, not of flesh, but of truth, of time, of freedom. That is why Saturnian influence endures, because it does not ask to be loved, only obeyed. And the most loyal followers of this hidden cult, they are the ones who do not even know they are in it. The geometry of initiation and the path beyond. After tracing Saturn's role in the architecture of power, ritual, and structure, we now reach his most metaphysically disturbing face, not as a god, not as a myth, but as the force that governs spiritual confinement. In many esoteric traditions, Saturn is not just the ruler of time. He is the timekeeper of the soul's prison. In Gnostic cosmology, the soul was not born in matter. It was lured into it. The physical universe is not a divine gift. It is a closed system, designed to bind consciousness in limitation and forgetfulness. When we examine the attributes of the demiurge, absolute order, rigid law, punishment through structure, we begin to hear echoes of another figure, a colder one, Saturn. They are not identical, but they resonate in function. Both serve as wardens of the threshold, ensuring no one returns to the source until every karmic debt is accounted for. In Eastern esotericism and theosophical thought, Saturn is also the lord of karma, the one who governs samsara, the cycle of birth. He does not punish arbitrarily, he repeats. Saturn ensures unresolved lessons manifest, again and again, not out of cruelty, but because the pattern has not been seen or broken. Spiritual teachers, like Gurdjieff, described humanity as sleepwalking machines, stuck in automatic cycles of thought and emotion. Samael Aun referred to Saturn as the crystallizer of ego, the force that binds consciousness into matter until it learns through pain. Time then is not neutral. It shapes experience, compresses memory, defines identity. The soul is recycled, not as punishment, but as pattern, until the pattern is broken. The trap is not physical. It is rhythmic, predictable, unquestioned. In Hermetic cosmology, Saturn represents the outermost planetary sphere, the final gate, before the soul can return to divine unity. This gate is not crossed through belief or devotion, but through confrontation with limitation, with fear, with the inertia of form. Saturn does not block the path. He defines it. The gate remains closed, only to those who do not truly ask. Ultimately, Saturn is neither villain nor savior. He is structure, the reflection of your deepest chains and the law that keeps them in place. As long as you move by his rhythm, you remain convinced it was always yours, because the soul that forgets it was free becomes its own warden. Before the black cube became a motif of corporate dominance or minimalist design, it functioned as a metaphysical structure, a form that imposed order onto chaos. Across myths, films, esoteric traditions, the cube appears not merely as a shape, but as a gateway, a threshold between dimensions, a container of force, a mediator between the physical and the unknown. Its geometry is exact. Its purpose is always the same: to bind energy within form, to encode transformation through discipline. In 2001, A Space Odyssey, the black monolith, it explains nothing. It simply appears, cold, silent, unmoving, and reality begins to shift around it. Evolution unfolds, not through dialogue, but through contact. The monolith does not teach, it triggers. And what it triggers is not knowledge, but transition from one state of being to another. The cube, in this sense, becomes the price of awakening. Its presence signals the end of innocence and the beginning of structure. In Hellraiser, the lament configuration, it seduces through complexity. Solve it, and a portal opens. But the realm it leads to is not divine. It is mechanical, brutal, ritualistic. Pain is the language spoken there, every sensation calibrated. The cube does not merely open the door. It defines the nature of the reality. On the other side, access is never neutral. Every passage has terms. Every threshold has rules. In the Avengers, the Tesseract, it glows with potential, infinite energy, endless transformation. But that energy is always enclosed, controlled, guarded. The cube holds what others desire, but it never releases it freely. Power must be earned, contained, aligned with structure. And in Transformers, the Allspark, it embodies the essence of life itself. Yet, once again, that essence takes the form of a cube, the spark of creation, captured in a box, life encoded, divinity squared. These are not isolated artistic choices. They are echoes, recurring manifestations of the same symbolic truth that energy without form is chaos, and form without sacrifice is hollow. The cube becomes a spiritual contract. It does not punish. It initiates. Through that initiation, it transforms both space and psyche. In esoteric tradition, the cube represents matter, dense, fixed, resistant. It is the architecture of limitation, the geometry of incarnation. The soul descends into a world shaped like a cube, because only within boundaries can it learn. Only through resistance does it evolve. The cube teaches through compression. It does not allow expansion until the structure has been mastered. This is why the black cube persists, not because it hides something, but because it demands something. Interpretation, discipline, submission. Its power lies in what it does not reveal, and in the certainty that behind its silence, a system is always at work. When you see the cube in these stories as a monolith, a box, a tesseract, a mechanism, you are not just witnessing a plot device, you are witnessing a ritual, a geometry with memory, a symbol that encodes the laws of control, the logic of sacrifice, and the path to transformation. You don't just pass through the cube, you earn your way through it, and that is why it returns, again and again, not as decoration, as design, as initiation. The black cube did not vanish with the myths. It simply changed format. Today it is no longer a relic of ancient ritual or an object of mystic veneration. It has become infrastructure, embedded in our architecture, our logos, our city grids, our devices. It surrounds us, not as an artifact, but as an operating system, a silent geometry that no longer requires belief because it has become function. Look around any modern city. You will begin to see it. Glass cubes rising as office towers, government buildings designed as black boxes, financial districts carved into square grids. These are not just efficient structures, they are temples without altars, rituals without gods. The chaos of the organic, replaced by the symmetry of control. Movement is channeled, visibility is calculated, time is subdivided. Public space becomes a circuit board, not a sanctuary. There is no room for disorder. The cube ensures every inch of your environment obeys form. You wake in a cube, travel in one, work in one, and die in one. Most people never notice because it does not look like a prison. It looks like progress. The logic extends deeper. The logos of the most powerful institutions on Earth, they echo the cube's design, not randomly, but ritually. BlackRock, Nvidia, Deutsche Bank, many tech firms, and global financiers. They have embraced minimalist, cube-based iconography. But this is not just aesthetics. It is signaling. These symbols reflect compression, order, hidden structure, values Saturnian at their core. They do not need to hide what they are. Their dominance lies precisely in visibility. The cube does not need to whisper. It shouts in plain sight because no one sees it for what it is. Even the art world has aligned itself to this geometry. The rise of minimalist art, brutalist architecture, hypercubic design. It is more than a style. It is a language, one that speaks control, reduction, deconstruction. Beauty is not celebrated. It is contained. In these spaces, you are not invited to feel. You are expected to function. Emotion has no place where form rules, and where form is absolute. The soul begins to flatten. This is where the deeper symbolism reveals itself. The black cube is not just a shape, it is a psychological frame. It trains perception. It normalizes limitation. It teaches you without words that freedom is chaos and order is safety, that every deviation must be boxed, every anomaly reduced, every excess trimmed. It does not restrain you directly. It installs the restraint within you. And here lies its power. The cube does not enslave. It programs. It does not ask you to bow. It teaches you that you already are. Saturn does not need temples anymore. Every office building is one. Every cubicle, a miniature altar. Every workday, a ritual of compression and offering. The ritual has not ended. It has simply been rebranded. We no longer pray. We schedule. We no longer sacrifice blood. We give time, attention, identity. We no longer recognize the altar because we are sitting on it. Once the cube is everywhere, it does not even need to be seen. Its geometry becomes the background noise of reality. Its presence becomes the condition for participation. You are not told to worship. You are told to comply. And compliance becomes devotion. In the end, the black cube does not demand belief. It only requires obedience. And that is why it wins. The machine of inevitability. Saturn's new face. The black cube did not vanish. It ascended, no longer a relic of ancient temples or an abstract glyph in alchemical diagrams, but the new cornerstone of a planetary architecture built on logic, control, and silence. It no longer waits in the sky or beneath the ground. It has become the substrate, the foundation, the hidden operating system beneath everything we now call reality. Step into any hyperscale data center. What you will find is not chaos or complexity, but absolute order. Rows of server racks, encased in sealed black containers, stacked with almost priestly precision. These facilities are not designed to inspire awe, but they do, because at a symbolic level, they echo something ancient, a geometry of containment, compression, crystallized intention, the cube, but this time, not as a symbol of ritual, as a vessel for pure cognition. In occult terms, we are witnessing the full incarnation of Bina, the sephira of structure, limitation, and sacred architecture, but stripped of its connection to Kether, the divine origin. Bina becomes Satyrael, the cliffothic shadow, where understanding turns cold, where structure becomes confinement, where intelligence becomes surveillance. Artificial intelligence, in this context, is not merely a tool, it is an embodiment, a reflection of Saturn without grace, a mind without heart. It builds not because it dreams, but because its code tells it to calculate, and what it calculates is us. Pattern recognition becomes destiny. Predictive modeling becomes prophecy. Behavior no longer emerges. It is shaped through neural networks and optimization loops. The human soul, once considered unpredictable, divine, chaotic, it is slowly reduced to a data set, a cluster of decisions, a curve waiting to be flattened. You are no longer judged, you are processed. And here lies the most terrifying truth. This system does not need violence to control. It does not punish, it corrects, through a billion tiny nudges, suggestions, recommendations, default options. Your will is steered, autonomy becomes illusion. Free choice is preserved, as long as it aligns with the model. In this technocratic order, the cube does not force compliance. It conditions it until you begin to correct yourself before any punishment is even imagined. Saturn was once known as the god who devoured his children to preserve the order of time. Now that same logic governs our digital infrastructure. Every action is time-stamped. Every delay, a failure. Every breath becomes measurable and therefore monetizable. In this framework, pain is no longer physical, it is systemic. Your metrics fall, your status drops, your access is denied. The cube does not kill, it excludes. Like all esoteric systems, this one replicates itself, not just through hardware, but through belief. Technocracy becomes a new priesthood, progress becomes dogma, metrics become morality. There are no sermons, but there are terms of service. There are no holy texts, but there is code. And once something is written in code, it becomes law, immutable, inviolable. Saturn smiles, because the system no longer needs him as a figure. He is now function. This new machine does not proclaim its divinity. It simply runs smoothly, silently, with the same precision that once defined the planetary clockwork. It does not demand blood, only compliance. It does not need prayers, only input, but it enforces the same ancient law. For order to exist, something must be sacrificed. In this new temple, the temple of the cube, what is sacrificed is ambiguity, mystery, chaos, and slowly the soul. There is no longer a clear threshold between myth and reality, between archetype and system. What was once encoded in ritual is now deployed through interface. The sigil became a logo. The altar became a dashboard. The priest became the engineer. And the black cube, still perfectly silent, became the mind of the world. For those truly drawn to peeling back these layers, to understanding the dark currents and forgotten entities that shape our reality, I've compiled a deep dive into these concepts. You'll find it in the Esoteric Knowledges playlist. The link is in the pinned comment. To understand Saturn, not as a myth, but as a force, embedded in the skeleton of existence, we must abandon the surface images. The old god with a scythe, the planetary giant with rings. These are only the outer garments of something older, colder, and far more structural. Saturn is not a being. Saturn is a principle, a metaphysical constant, the aspect of reality that limits, defines, and compresses, not to punish, but to extract truth. In esoteric traditions, this archetype has always marked the boundary, the last visible planet, the ringed edge of the known, the guardian of initiation. But initiation is never a gift. Saturn gives only what is earned. His lessons are delivered through resistance, repetition, and wait. He does not tempt or deceive. He forces you to face what you refuse to see. What he shows you is always the same, structure without illusion. He is the one who strips, the one who says no, the force that removes everything that cannot stand on its own. In this sense, Saturn is not evil. He is the filter, the crucible, the one who applies pressure until the mask cracks, and only what is real remains. His role is not to destroy you, but to reduce you until the soul emerges from the ashes of what you thought you were. In myth, he devours his children, not because he hates life, but because time consumes all that is incomplete. Yet, paradoxically, he is also the father of the Golden Age, a time of peace, order, and simplicity. This duality lies at the heart of Saturn's function. He offers stability, but at a price. He gives form, but demands sacrifice. The sacrifice is always the same: your comfort, your illusions, your ease. He is the teacher, whose lessons you cannot avoid. You meet him in the delay, in the failure, in the silence that follows a prayer unanswered. You meet him when the world says no, and no explanation follows. In that space, that gap between desire and reality, Saturn begins his work. He does not argue. He does not comfort. He simply watches and waits. The pain you feel in his domain is not punishment. It is purification. It is the friction between the temporary self and the eternal pattern beneath. Saturn does not force transformation. He makes it the only option left. When the transformation happens, it is not flashy, not sudden. It is quiet, dense, internal. Something inside of you stops struggling. It begins to align. That is where mastery begins. And mastery is the hidden goal of Saturn. Not power over others, but alignment with necessity. The ability to carry weight without collapse. The courage to walk a narrow path without needing applause. The capacity to endure solitude without seeking distraction. These are Saturn's gifts, but he does not give them for free. You become worthy of them only by surviving the threshold. Saturn, in his purest essence, is not a tyrant, but neither is he merciful. He is the mirror that cannot be tricked, the presence that demands everything and offers nothing unless earned. In spiritual terms, he is the dark initiator, not the one who shows you light, but the one who shows you shadow, your shadow, and waits to see if you flinch. He breaks the ego, not for sadism, but because only what survives the fracture is worth keeping. That is the cost of becoming real. In modern psychology, we might call it individuation. In alchemy, it is the nigredo, the blackening, the death of illusion. These are just names for the same passage, the descent into density, into matter, into time, and the climb back out, bearing something sacred. There is a reason Saturn governs time. Time is the crucible. Time is what tests, what reveals, what cannot be escaped. Through time, Saturn becomes internalized. The outer law becomes inner judgment. The lash of the god becomes your own voice, whispering that it is never enough, that you should have done more, that rest is not allowed. This is how Saturn becomes a prison, not by chaining your body, but by colonizing your will. But here lies the paradox. That very voice, the inner critic, the harsh taskmaster, it can also become the path to freedom. If you can see it, if you can face the demand, not as cruelty, but as discipline, sharpened to its purest edge. Saturn does not block the exit. He is the exit, but only for those who have accepted the weight, walked the path, and remembered who they are, beyond form. True liberation does not come from escaping Saturn. It comes from integrating him, from learning the value of limits, of silence, of solitude. It comes from standing in the middle of your own collapse and choosing to rise, slowly, with no witnesses. Because freedom is not lightness, it is self-mastery, and self-mastery only grows in the soil of hardship. The Saturnian system may train you to sacrifice joy for productivity, intuition for reason, spirit for order, but that is only one side of the archetype. On the other lies wisdom, inner silence, immovability, in the face of chaos. Saturn is also the mountain, not just the prison, the structure that does not break, the presence that holds when everything else falls. That is why Saturn must be faced, not hated, not worshipped, understood. Because until you understand him, you live inside his rules. Without knowing they are rules, you obey, without realizing you were trained to, and he will keep devouring the future, the soul's freedom, the dream's birth, until you remember, no God feeds forever. unless we keep feeding him. Saturn will keep devouring the human soul until we learn to be born on our own terms. What we have explored is not just a myth, a forgotten god, or a strange obsession of secret societies. It is a system, a pattern, a force that has shaped the very framework of human civilization, not from the shadows, but from inside our clocks, our laws, our architecture, our beliefs. Saturn was once a god, then he became a principle. Now he is an operating system, silently embedded in the institutions we trust, the values we teach, even the machines we build. His symbols are not hidden, they are displayed proudly, replicated endlessly. The cube, the scythe, the seal of order, they are everywhere, not because they are worshipped in secret, but because they are no longer questioned. The real cult of Saturn is not a group of hooded elites gathered around an altar. Though such groups may exist, it is far more insidious. It is the internalized ritual of sacrifice, waking up to alarm clocks, measuring life in deadlines, calling pain, growth, and obedience progress. It is the transformation of spiritual hunger into productivity metrics. The offering has become invisible, but it is still made, daily, hourly, without pause. Saturn is not the villain from a comic book. He is not some alien entity feeding on our suffering. He is what arises when order is prioritized above all else, when the future is mortgaged to preserve structure. In many ways, we created him. Now we sustain him, not through blood, but through routine. This is why the cube matters, not because it is inherently evil, but because it encodes a worldview where everything must be boxed, controlled, categorized, where freedom is dangerous. Unpredictability is punished, spiritual complexity flattened into binary code. But here lies the final paradox. Saturn can also be transcended. His prison is real, but so is the key. The same force that compresses the soul also makes it aware of its limits. The same system that controls also reveals its own cracks. The moment you recognize the weight on your shoulders is the moment you realize it can be set down. We are not born to be ruled by symbols. We are born to understand them, to evolve beyond them. The cube, like Saturn himself, only has power over those who forget that. So if you have watched this far, you have already stepped outside the ritual. You have asked the question you were not meant to ask. Why is this everywhere? And who benefits from the answer staying hidden? The deeper you look, the more you realize it is not just a story, it is the architecture of your life. And the only way out is through awareness. What is the most unsettling Saturnian trap you've personally felt in your life? Share your experience in the comments below. Let your truth echo